Hey everybody, it's Guy here from TDI. We're just shooting another video here today, and our topic of the day is property management. It's what we consider the most important part of any real estate investment, and just spend a couple minutes telling you why. So, who is a property manager, or who can be a property manager? It is either you or a third-party organization. And also the third-party organizations, they can be licensed or non-licensed. And it's okay to be either, but there's different rules and regulations that apply to licensed and non-licensed property managers. The most important one is that, or the biggest one I should say, the biggest difference is that licensed property managers are allowed typically to accept the money and on their own and put it in their own trust accounts. Non-licensed property managers are not allowed to be doing that or shouldn't be doing that. What is a property manager? Property manager is the person or company that is responsible for the day-to-day operations of a rental asset. Pretty straightforward, but of course, you know, as a landlord or an owner, you're ultimately going to be the one managing your property from a higher level. It's just who's going to be answering the phone calls, who's going to be dealing with the issues, who's going to be calling and meeting the trades, those kinds of things. When do you need property management? Well, when you don't or can't manage the property yourself. So a lot of people don't have the time or the capacity or the knowledge or the understanding to do it. So in a lot of cases, they just shouldn't be doing it and they can't do it themselves. Or a lot of other reasons are proximity. So that's another main reason I should say that, you know, of course, if I'm in Vancouver and I've got a 20-unit building in Calgary, it's hard for me to pick up the phone and fly over there for a plumbing leak, that kind of thing. So typically a lot of remote landlords are going to be using property management companies. But you got to be careful with that because one of the biggest issues is where you find property managers. Word of mouth, I put on here first. You got word of mouth, internet, and then you can also use a resident manager, which is someone within the building, but that takes a lot more management because typically they're not going to handle the full scope of work. But the reason word of mouth is so important is because the property management is so important, and you never know who you're going to get off the internet. The internet doesn't tell you anything about how good they are or their history. They're always going to give you the best case scenario. They're always going to give you the referrals to people that are going to say the best things and all of that stuff. But believe me when I say the word of mouth is probably your most important one, because if you find someone that says they're extremely satisfied and happy with their property manager, to me, that's way more important than any other information I'm going to find out. Something else you can do as far as due diligence, just like, you know, any kind of due diligence on somebody, is you can go to their buildings. Ask them for their buildings, where do they property manage. You can go to those buildings or go to those places, knock on the doors, ask the tenants, find out, you know, all that information that you know they're not going to tell you, but you're going to find it on the inside, and tenants will be the first people happy to tell you how they really think. Why would you need property management? Well, again, in my opinion, it is the most important aspect to the operations of a rental asset. And we at TDI have found this out, just like everybody, the hard way, trying to do it ourselves and trying to third party it out and trying all different ways. But at the end of the day, all of our financials are based on the property management, and most of the money in your deal is made or lost right there at that step. It's the first thing that comes in, and it's the last thing that goes out. So how do you property manage a building? So this is a bit of a breakdown, not only for property managers, but it's what you should be looking for in a property manager. So if you're managing a property manager, which you should be, because if you're not, you might as well not be managing your building. But in the event that you are managing a property manager, you should have a strict set of guidelines of things that you know they are doing at a bare minimum, because there's so much to do and so much work in such a small amount of time. and that it just becomes it becomes important for you to focus on the most important aspects, and then everything else is just kind of a bonus, if you ask me. But how you would do that, number one, is a strict screening process. So you can set up a strict screening process, and you can make someone use that process, and I would highly recommend that. That process includes background checks, criminal checks, social media checks, and credit checks. If you're not doing that, you are 100% putting yourself at risk of putting somebody in your building that is going to be costing you a lot more money than you think you're making. And so by screening and putting most of your time into that upfront due diligence, you are going to eliminate 90% of the issues you will deal with in a building. I guarantee it. Safe and clean building. Good tenants like safe and clean buildings. It sounds very simple, but it's a big one. If people walk in and they just feel unsafe or it feels dirty, you're going to lose 90% of your good tenants right from the minute they step in your building. So that's a big one. Regular presence and inspections is also a big one, because that shows people that you care. It shows people that you're there. It shows people that you're willing to go past their doorstep in order to make sure that your building is being taken care of properly, and that nothing funny is going on in there. And that makes people just have a lot more sense of pride, and it makes them prepare for you coming on a regular basis, which is exactly what you want. Efficient processes. So what'll happen a lot of the times is that it just becomes overwhelming. You get front loaded with a whole bunch of stuff. For instance, like, rent day and inspections. Those are all very busy times of the month. And if you have a whole bunch of other things piling on top, like maintenance issues and complaints and all that stuff, it's easy for things to go by the wayside. So making sure you have an efficient process in place for you to be able to handle it, i.e. some support staff, or even a 1-800 number or a virtual assistant, somewhere where people can just talk to somebody, and at least you have a ball rolling and a process rolling behind the time that's being put in. It just helps you a lot. Strict late rent notices. So it is the only thing that we really have as landlords to be able to effectively take care of bad tenants, and that is late payment on rent. The rental branch and the rental agency here, they have the same opinion. You can do a lot of things as a tenant and get away with a lot of things as a tenant and prolong your stay in the building, but late payments are the big one. So always give your notices right away. It doesn't matter if they're a minute late or a day late. You give it to them on the very next day after they're supposed to have rent. If they pay their rent and hand you a check at the same time, fantastic. But at least that notice is on their record, and then you can continue piling those up. And in our market in British Columbia, if you get 3 of them, that tenant's gone and there's nothing they can do about it. So always make sure. You don't want to go 5 days and just let them pay you without giving those notices, because that stuff will really bite you in the butt later. Streamlined eviction notices, it's the same thing. There's processes in place to make sure that you are filing the right documentations at the right time, in preparation and in advance for certain situations. And you want to be planning for those the best that you can. So for instance, if you have somebody who has agreed to move out and they've signed a mutual agreement, or you've got an eviction notice that's been upheld by the RTB, we will go straight to an order of possession, which is kind of the next step if a tenant doesn't leave. But you don't want to wait till they don't leave, because if you wait till they don't leave, either you're screwing up your next tenancy, or you're waiting months to get back into the residential tenancy branch for an arbitration, and then you've wasted a lot of time. So making sure that those things are happening on a regular basis and being efficient is a good thing. Ask tenants for feedback all the time. It's just good to know how they're feeling. They're going to give you true indications of how they're feeling in the building, and the more you listen to them and the more you work with them on making sure that your buildings are safe and clean and they're set up the way they want, the longer they're going to stay and the happier they're going to be. And then quick responses to everything. You just want to make sure that you're there, you're answering questions, you're giving quick responses. The more people feel like they're being heard, the more they're going to give you in return. And there's so much more to the property management aspect, which is why it's so important to make sure that you're focusing on the right property management choice. And it's good for you to do it yourself to understand the process. But of course, when it becomes overwhelming, then you're going to need the support. But at the end of the day, I can't say enough about how important this is to an investment, because believe me, we at TDI have learned the hard way in a lot of circumstances, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that this process is nailed once and for all, and hope it works the same for you. So if you want to know more, you can click on the link, or you can go to topdowninvestments.com. We'll see you there.